background is blurry. You're recording already.
Welcome, welcome. Cool. It's like blurred in the
Can you let
background.
someone in if you?
Yeah, sure.
We learn in the merit of our 46th
Hi, Joyce.
anniversary.
It's your anniversary. Happy anniversary. Wow. How many years?
46.
46. That's so exciting. We have a big, what's the 50th call? Is that like the silver or the gold? Okay, so please God, we should all celebrate together without masks. Amen. Okay, we're gonna get started. So first of all, thank you for all braving the craziness and coming here. I really didn't know if anyone was going to come in person, and I'm also very grateful for those of you, Jenny and Laura and Hannah and Katie and Joyce. Thank you all for coming on and being part of this class. And we have 9 ladies here, plus me 10. So we have a minion. We do.
Always having a meeting.
Okay, so last week, let's just kind of backtrack where we were. We got on a lot of tangents. We started 2 weeks ago talking about the pillars, right? The pillars of the world, right? What were they? The 3 pillars. This is like Jewish geography. You need to know this. Torah, avoda, service, and Gemilut Chesed. Gemilut Chesedim. Good. So now we're pulling apart the Chesed pillar. Hello, welcome. And the prayer that I shared with you pulled apart the different parts of the Chesed pillar. Okay. So we spoke about honoring parents. We spoke last week about the mitzvah of giving to a bride, or being a part of her simcha in whichever way. And I see some of you have done your homework. I'm so impressed. On Shabbat, someone came over to me and also told me something so beautiful that they did for a bride. And I'm just really just blown away by all of you for really doing it, for really listening. You really listened. and having this mitzvah as part of our daily, monthly, yearly, we're doing a lot of good things, but maybe that mitzvah gets, kind of falls by the wayside for periods of time. So I'm hoping to be able to do a little bit of that tonight at the wedding. I don't know if I'll dance as much as I used to, because I don't know if I'll hold anyone's hands. It's going to be a different experience. But what I want to say is it's amazing when God challenges us, and God has challenged all of us over the last 2 years in very interesting ways, how much we rise, how much we adapt, how much we can be so creative with our circumstances to still somehow be there for another person. And that's what this is all about. So the 2 mitzvot that we're going to talk about today is comforting mourners and visiting the sick. Okay, those are the two topics for today. But before we get there, I just want to say, over the last 2 years, like this new reality that we are living in, and I honestly cannot believe we're still in it, because I'm a very optimistic person. So when it started, I would say, oh, it's going to be over in just a few weeks. Just you wait and see. And everything, like, I cannot believe, and we're all kind of in a time warp. Like, we're like, is it really 2 years? Is it really that many months? Like, so much time has gone on, and grandparents have missed bar mitzvahs of grandchildren. And I mean, my parents have not been to Israel in 4 years because they were planning on going then. And they have grandchildren that they haven't met that are like, 3, 4 years old, right? And it's just, there's so many. So what I wanted to just share is the beauty of the crushing. And we spoke about this, I think, on Shabbat, like how when we crush olive oil, or when we crush an olive, the purest, the more we crush it, the purest the oil comes. We call it shemen zayit zach. Like that's the oil that we should light the menorah with. That is like the very, very special oil. Like the more that it's crushed, the more purity comes out. And I kind of feel, at least in the Jewish world, that is exactly what happened over the last few years. So I will share what I mean. So this past weekend, there was a conference. It was the Aguda Convention. Yeah, Craig went on Saturday night, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe on Thursday night. They had a few different sessions that were open to the public, and it was a whole weekend, and families came from all over the place. And I listened to some of it online. We chose not to go. It's a big crowd. I listened online, and it just blew me away. It was basically the first time that people came back together in a large setting from all over, Jews from all over, people that are really involved in communal work, and shared like stories from the trenches. And I was listening to one of the presenters, and he was, I could not believe, like, we don't know, we only see like what we see, but what organizations had to go through in order to keep things going. So one example that he gave, this is in the heart of COVID, probably summer of 2020, all the camps were shut down, all the schools were shut down, everything is shut down. But for a Jew, what is the most important thing? I mean, we just said, what are the three pillars? Torah, avoda, service, and chesed. So how are they going to keep those open when the doors of the yeshivas were shut? So this one rabbi, he got up and he said, well, no one really knows the story, but the camps, like, so this camp Aguda, this was the Aguda convention, all camps were shut down. So they rented a space for about 450 young yeshiva students to keep learning through the summer and have a summer experience. We need joy. We need an outlet, like just to be home, stuck in small quarters, and everyone's on Zoom. Like, it was just like everyone was just losing their minds. So what he said was it cost them $1,000 per bed above and beyond the camp tuition that some guy forked out and just said, I don't know what's going to happen. It could be we're going to get one case of COVID, the whole thing will shut down, right? There were inspectors coming weekly. He said the entire 7 weeks that they were open, there was not one case, okay, which is crazy, right? Because it's not like you could really social distance in a camp, right? So there was not one case. There was one, it's a false positive, right? One false positive, and what they did was they had to take the entire bunk, rent a cabin, separate them for 10 days or whatever it was, and then they were able to come back, and everything carried on. And amazing things happened. And basically what he was saying and what I was hearing was like, people are willing to go the extra mile to do what was needed to be done to save these kids, to give them the experience. I mean, how many kids have we heard of that are no longer here, that have, unfortunately committed suicide, fell into drug addiction, mental health issues were exploding off the charts over the last few years. You can't even get a therapist. You cannot get a therapist. The therapists are in such demand because everyone on the telephone, okay? If anyone had a small issue, it was magnified 1,000 times over with the uncertainty of the time that we're living in. So people are struggling. So there are people, simple people, this man that was sharing the story, I've never heard of him before. But he single-handedly spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure that this group of kids carried on, right? That's true chesed. And I think about all the stories that I experienced. One of my favorite memories of COVID, I'm talking about COVID as if like Allah HaShalom, like it's over, amen. But one of my favorite memories was when our community in Portland, we put together a drive-by event at the old age home. And it was after months of no one is able to go in. They're not going out. They're so isolated. Some of them were losing their minds. Our community in Portland was made up of elderly people. So a lot of the mothers, a lot of the parents, people that would usually come to synagogue we couldn't even see them. So it was so beautiful. We made signs, hang in there, we'll get through this, the signs for the healthcare heroes. We appreciate you, we love you. And we just went, there's music, there were balloons, it was joyful. All the people from the old age home were outside and their walkers and just waving like, queens and princesses, like the wave, they were so cute. And my kids were like, Mom, like it was my son, right? I was so excited about it that when we finished doing it, I was like, so after a few rounds, I had to drop my kids off and then I went back because it was so beautiful how we could be so creative in times of challenge to still be there for another human being. That's what it's all about, right? You don't need to have money. Chesed does not come from a place of writing a check. It's about being there for another human being, heart to heart, ear to ear. So there are many, many stories, and I'm sure you guys have many of your own stories. It's all about sensitivity. So I'd like to share a story that was printed, and this is yours, your copy. This one I'll keep in the center unless you want to take it. But we have to figure out what to do with this. Maybe we'll do something with it. Is there a little background? Oh, so it's just one. It's just
Excuse me, can everybody mute, please?
yeah. I think we're getting it. You're very welcome. It's in this part of the magazine, the Ami Living. Okay, so I'd like to share a little story that was printed this week in one of the Jewish publications, the Ami. It's called The Power of Sensitivity. We could all be very, very proud. In Deerfield, Illinois, just north of Chicago, there is a Kiruv organization that's outreach, known as the L'Chaim Center, which hosts Shabbatons, Friday night dinners, and introductory classes on topics in Judaism. Founded about 20 years ago by Rabbi David Began, it is one of the fixtures of the Deerfield Jewish community. And one of the fixtures of the L'Chaim Center is a woman named Doris Lazarus. Doris is the daughter of Holocaust survivors. She helped found the Illinois Holocaust Museum and is now a guide and educator there. She cared for her elderly mother until her Petira, that's Hebrew for her passing, in 2017. 5 years ago, Doris's mother injured her arm. Doris took her to see a specialist. When the doctor began the examination, Doris's mother lifted her sleeve, exposing the number tattooed on her arm. "I survived the Holocaust," she told the doctor. The doctor shrugged. "I don't want to see that," he said coldly. "I'm just here to look at your arm." Doris was stunned by his callousness. "We're leaving," she announced, "right now." She and her mother turned around and walked out of the office. Once they were outside, Doris wasn't sure what to do next. She certainly didn't want to subject her mother to treatment at the hands of an insensitive person who didn't understand what it meant to be an elderly survivor, but her mother still needed to have her arm examined. So she called Rabbi Began at the L'Chaim Center and told him what had happened. "What should I do?" she asked. "I need to get my mother to a specialist." David thought quickly. He had a neighbor, Dr. Goldberg, that's a pseudonym, okay, who was a frum orthopedic surgeon. Maybe he'd be able to see her. He called the doctor and explained the situation. "Do you think you could squeeze her in?" he asked. Dr. Goldberg was also horrified by the other doctor's cold-heartedness. "Absolutely," he said, "no problem." He found an open time slot and welcomed Doris and her mother to his practice. Dr. Goldberg treated Doris's mother with the utmost respect during the visit. After treating her, he said something that took Doris's breath away. "You are a holy woman," he said to Doris's mother. "Please give me and my wife a blessing that we should have a baby." Dr. Goldberg and his wife had been married for about 10 years and were still childless. Doris's mother gave him a fervent blessing. He thanked her and then saw them out. 9 months later, Dr. Goldberg's wife gave birth to a baby boy, their only child. He is now 5 years old, a living testament to the power of sensitivity. It is said that the Satmar Rebbe used to advise those seeking a bracha to ask anyone who had a number tattooed on his or her arm, explaining that someone who had experienced the horrors of the Holocaust was certainly worthy of bestowing blessings. Dr. Goldberg saw a chance to show his appreciation to the survivors of the greatest horror ever inflicted on our people. He seized the opportunity and his kindness was repaid. So, isn't that so beautiful? So how this story got to print was, I think Judy mentioned it to Gadi, and Gadi mentioned it to me, and I was like, that's incredible. And then when we were in Mexico a few weeks ago, while we were driving to and from our scuba diving, Gadi was on the phone with Rabbi Yoel Gold, who is a storyteller and incredible movie maker. And he said he has a column and he wants to put that story in the column. So we were on the story with the doctor who is anonymously, he didn't want to have his name published for personal reasons, but lots of back and forth. And then the HP, the Hashgacha Pratit, everyone's, tearing over here. You're not alone, Doris. The HP was that we didn't even know he wrote it. I don't usually get this publication. I never would have seen it. But we got a message from Ali on Sunday morning. She said, what a crazy thing. They were sitting at Dana Margolis's house, and Dana's daughter was reading the magazine on Shabbos afternoon. And she's like, Auntie Ali, you guys are in here. That was it. So I think we're gonna keep this one here and figure out what we're gonna do with it, but you have a new copy and you could get it still if you want more. Happy to get you more, but yeah, what should be an inspiration for everyone, and truly you are an inspiration, and so was your mom. Okay, so now back to our topic. Okay, so the power of sensitivity, the power of helping people, and when I talk about what happened in the last 2 years in the Jewish world, it's almost hard to understand it because we've all been very confused. There's the news, there's the facts, there's the emotions, there's the confusion, right? And I don't have any clarity what's right, what's wrong, if we should even be here right now, sitting, everyone's far apart and masked. I hope, please God, we're coming to learn Torah, but it's confusing. Should I go to a wedding tonight? Like I almost canceled 10 times today, right? It's just, how do we live with this new reality and not, as David said, go back into the bunker, right? I love that. That's so true. We don't want to go back into the bunker. That was devastating. So how to really show up for a person. So when things were really, really bad, and I'm just going to give an example from my sister who lives in Toronto. She has 8 children, thank God, and many of them are in yeshivas. And during the height of the pandemic, when all the schools were shuttered by law, they were able to figure out ways of safely coming together and learning. So the maximum in Canada of gatherings at that time was 10 people. You couldn't have, which worked out really well for minyanim, right? My father was sending me videos of the tent. My parents go to the largest Orthodox synagogue in North America. Okay, it's called the Bayit, Beth Avram Joseph of Toronto. It's a beautiful building. It's gorgeous. It's always the place it's the hub for all the weddings and all the occasions. Gorgeous. And my father is sitting freezing cold. Snow is like caving in on the tent because they had tents set up big enough to accommodate 10 people at a safe distance. But there was never, just for a short time until we figured things out, things were shut down, right? But usually, there were ways of still learning Torah. I mean, thank God for Zoom, right? And coming together for things like minyanim. In Israel, you might have seen videos of people doing their minyanim on porches, right? Because everyone lives in a very Jewish populated, so like everyone's on their porch and they're Amen, Yehei, Shemei, Rabbah, like they're saying Kaddish and they're all answering Amen and blowing the shofar. That's how they did it. And so we've been through a lot, and there's been a lot of beauty. There's been a lot of beauty, a lot of chaos and darkness, and a lot of beauty. Does anyone here have any small glimmer of something that they want to share, of something that they saw or experienced just with humanity during this time? Anyone have anything? I'll tell you one of my favorite articles. I'm always on the lookout for Kiddush Hashem, like stories that sanctify God's name. There was a chassid, and chassidim always get a bad rep, right? They don't do well in the media because they're just so misunderstood, right? They look different. People don't like that. There was a chassid. I found this little blurb. It was like on the bottom of the newspaper, like barely made the headlines. But I shared it with my followers because it was so beautiful. Simple man, a chassid. He went and he bought out all the iPads that he could, like hundreds of iPads, and he programmed every single one, and he got volunteers to come program them. And they went to the hospitals and they taught the elderly people how to use an iPad, how to FaceTime with their family. They were so isolated. It was so beautiful, like a Kiddush Hashem that almost, these things don't get seen, like it's always the bad stuff, like the Netflix, like everything, There was another story that I read about a family that was devastated because they lost their elderly parents during COVID, and no one was able to be there with them, with the mom as she passed. And it was almost as if an angel came into their life. This Jewish nurse, a woman, she contacted the family. They were just getting up from Shiva. They were so broken, so devastated. And she said, I just want to let you know that I was with your mother for the last minutes of her life. We said the Shema together. We said Vidui. We said all the prayers that you say before your passing. And I just want you to know I held her hand as she left this world. Like an angel, Jewish angel that knew that that is how a Jew is supposed to leave the world. So, and there have been thousands of stories of such heroes, right? That really just saw the need, right? Figured it out, got the funds together and made it happen. So I always try to focus on all the good, right? And there's so much good. And it's all about being a mensch. It's just about being a mensch. What is the need? It's another human being in front of me right now. So now we're going to get to our topic, which is helping people that are ill and helping people once they've passed. Okay, so something important to know, that when someone is ill, the Shekhinah, God's presence, sits there above the head. You know this, Doris?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Okay, okay. Tell us more. Where did you hear that from? Just going to find the quote. Okay, wow. So I've never heard this before. I just learned this for the first time. I'm glad that it's a well-known thing. The source of it is from the Torah, from Parshat Vayechi, which we just finished, the last of Bereshit. And Jacob, right? Jacob is now ill and he's on his deathbed, and his sons and his grandchildren, he's giving them blessings. And it says that Jacob bows his head towards like the Shekhinah was there. He's bowing towards the Shekhinah. Could be he had more of a sense of maybe he saw the Shekhinah or felt the Shekhinah, right? But it was there in the room, and that's how we know this, that the Shekhinah, God's presence, rests over the head of someone that's ill. So now our job as people that visit someone that's ill is to take away a dose of their sickness. And when we visit someone, we actually do take away 1/60th of their illness. 1/60th of their illness. So that's why we're allowed to visit someone sick like 3 times a day. It's not just like you go once, and you could go a few times, because every time you go, you're taking some of their pain and their grief away. So my father was just recovering from a surgery 2 weeks ago, right? And he's still recovering, and we call him every day. And he sent an email to my children, like kind of detailing some of what he went through, explaining it. I passed my phone around to all the kids, let them read it on their own level and let them respond to themselves, like by themselves. Like, you know, I showed them how to do it. I think it was the first time that the younger ones had like replied to an email, because they don't usually do that in their day. And my father said that every time he got like ping, and it was like little Shua with all his spelling mistakes. And, you know, my father said those are his words. It took away so much of my pain. It was just so comforting to have my grandchildren writing to me and sharing words of comfort. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about what we could do in this mitzvah, and then let's move it across to, unfortunately, people that get very, very ill. We could sometimes be the bridge to help them get to the next world. And that's very important. We never leave someone that is extremely ill on their own. Someone that is passing, it's too scary for them. When their neshama is leaving their guf, it's almost like there's this reaction. So by someone being there, it helps to ease them along. It's almost like you're giving them permission, right? They just need, you know, I think some of us have been there with life and death in situations with our, you know, elderly parents and stuff like that. And it's probably different for everyone, but it's not simple. Sometimes they're holding so tight and they don't want to let go, and you need to just be there for them. Interesting. Wow. Wow. She just couldn't let go.
She wouldn't have
Walter.
either side, which I totally understand. But just walking. Something I was in. One of the hospice nurses said.
Wow.
Sit. If they don't want to leave.
Oh.
I don't know where that.
Wow.
Hospice workers, yeah, all the time.
Yeah, very often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Wow.
Oh, yeah. it's at the- And we'll be down, we were all there.
Wow.
My dad. With me on to the hospital.
Wow.
Because he didn't want me to see it.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Wow. Very, very hard to understand because we don't understand so much of this world, but what we do understand is what we're supposed to do. Okay, so we're going to focus now on what we do as a support to the person that is passing and how we could, like, I actually remember, I mean, 2 years ago, just 2 years ago when my grandmother was passing and I was holding her hand and she looked me in the eyes and she said, Ivala, like that's how she called me, Ivala, is this it? And at the time, I think we were all still in denial because it was so quick that all of a sudden she's in the hospital and we were like, how do we get her better, right? We were going to fight, we were going to bring her home and set up machinery and help her. But as the doctor said, like, you can't heal a heart of a 98-year-old woman. Like, it was congestive heart failure. Like, they were looking at my parents and be like, guys, you're not bringing this lady home. And we were just like in total disbelief. So when my grandmother asked me, Eve, like, is this it? You know what my gut was? No, Bubby, we're gonna get you better. We're gonna get you out of here. I mean, there's so much denial and there's so much emotions, like of just, I mean, towards the end, it was very clear. And we were able to be with her and say the prayers with her.
I think when my mother-in-law, you were encouraging her.
Hmm.
You could see that she was fighting for every single. You could just see it. And then I shared this that, you know, she wasn't, her eyes were closed a lot. And at one point, eyes got really big, open wide, and I think she saw my father-in-law.
Wow,
I
wow,
really do.
right. She was like
For me,
passing the
yeah.
bridge,
Yeah.
crossing over the bridge between this
And
world
then-
and the next world.
And then Bob and Katie did. Following.
Oh,
to the funeral. You never know.
wow, wow. So
And
what
without-
are the parts, what are the components of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick? What are the parts that we could do? So one of them is very, you know, obvious. It's the physical taking care of someone. If they're not getting care from a hospital, it's up to us to physically care for somebody. Okay, so there's the physical, there's the emotional, right? The emotional support is sometimes more important. Even if they're getting all their needs taken care of by the nurses, they're afraid, right? So it's the emotional support. And then the other thing that we could do is prayer. To pray for someone that's ill. That's huge. Or to sit with them and pray with them. Prayer is very, very important because it's almost like they need us. They need us, like sometimes they can't do that anymore. Right.
Katie had her. Because, I don't know.
Right.
Katie did it.
She was able to be that,
Yeah.
to be that person.
So what do you do now?
That's a really good question. Here, let me share something that I read over here. I mean, it's pretty basic. What do you guys think? What could you do if you can't be there with someone? Yeah, like it might not be the same level, but a call, a text message, a letter.
But they're hearing, so they can hear you. Because isn't the hearing the last thing to go?
Yeah. So talking about stories from the trenches over COVID. So as I shared, a lot of our community were elderly, like 90, you know, and they were isolated in the old age home, the Jewish old age home in Portland. And something so beautiful that I experienced was a mother and a daughter visiting each other through a glass window. And their hands just they were holding hands through the glass. And I mean, I get so choked up thinking about it, but there was so much love going through that glass pane. It was unbelievable. If the mother was feeling isolated and lonely, she felt strengthened. You know, I just saw like humanity shining. There were ways of us showing up for people, even without showing up for people. What'd you say?
People rise.
Yeah. Being creative or figuring out ways. I mean, I actually heard a crazy story. So in the New York hospital system, you were not allowed to get into the hospital during the height of COVID. And there was a man who actually, he did a short training to work in the hospital so he could come every single day and be by his elderly father. It was like a beautiful story. Like he was like, what do I need to do to get myself into the hospital? And he spent like the nights training, did his course, put his career on hold, took a job as an orderly in the hospital. Like unbelievable, like the power of mankind, the sensitivity, the chesed, the kindness, like to be there for someone until, I mean, at their end, like, so. Okay, so now let's move it from, unfortunately, people pass. Everyone will pass from this world. You can't get out of this world without passing away. It's a part of life, and I feel like the more comfortable we could be with death, the more we will live. The more we could understand what it means to leave this world, the more vibrant our life will be here in this world. That's totally how I see it. Like we don't like talking about death. We don't like talking about our will. We don't like talking to our kids about, like, you know, we don't like going there because we just want to live in the here and the now. Everything is good. But if we could get comfortable with the fact that everyone is going to die, how do we want to die? What do we want to be written on our gravestone? What do we want to be said at our eulogy? How much more we will be alive and vibrant and know what we're living for, right? That's what Rabbi Noah Weinberg of blessed memory, he would say. He would give these exercises. He would say, write your eulogy, like, and that's how you should live. Like, you know, and people of previous generations. This is going back like 100 years ago. Some tzaddikim would dig a grave and lie in a grave to experience their mortality. That we're all going to end up there, right? Like live each day to its fullest. It sounds so morbid, right? But just to know, like, you're not invincible. We're not here forever. Every day, right? The quote that I wanted to start this class off with is this saying from Pirkei Avot. It's Hayom Katzar, the day is short, the Malacha Meruba, and there is so much to do. It's a very powerful statement. Like, get moving, right? Take action now. The day is short. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this mitzvah of we call it mate mitzvah. It's the mitzvah of taking care of someone that has passed away. And this is one of the highest levels of a mitzvah. It's called chesed shel emet, right? This is the purest mitzvah because you can never expect to get repaid by the person that you have helped. So once you have helped them pass, what do you do? Okay, what do you do? Let's. You're in a room with someone that has just passed away. Not yet. The crying comes later. There's a time for crying, but it's not yet. I mean, if you cry, you cry.
Say that prayer.
Okay, so these are all good things. A shomer, a prayer. Okay, the prayer, the last prayer that you should say if they can't say it for themselves, which is usually the case, you say the Shema Yisrael. Okay, then you light a candle by their head. Okay, the candle is to push away all the evil forces. Okay, and so there's a candle lit in the Shiva house. There's usually a candle lit the whole time, right? Okay, so what's it called? The Yurtzeit candle. So yeah, so let me just see if I wrote it here. I think after they die, or as I'm going to look it up because I just saw it this morning, but I'm not sure where I found it. Sorry. Right. You know, the first time I saw this, yeah, the first time I saw this was during the low part of the pandemic. Two of Gadia and my closest friends lost children to overdose. So my best friend lost her daughter, and Gadi's best friend Tony, you met Tony. Tony lost her son Hunter to an overdose. So that morning, it's interesting. Gadi and I have been involved in the Chaver Kadisha. So that's a very different experience. Like, we're not afraid of death. We've touched death. We know how to work with it and do what we need to do for Jewish burial. But this was very different. And Gadi actually texted me. So that morning, Tony, our very dear friend, texted us, Hunter stopped breathing, please come. So Gadi ran over, I organized the kids, and I made my way over a few minutes later. And Gadi texted me, prepare yourself, like brace yourself when you walk in. So it was very, very hard. It was very, very hard. He was just on the floor, like a 20-year-old boy, beautiful boy. And there were paramedics and trying to get him to breathe. And it was devastating. All his family was around him. And I just let Gadi lead, right? And he just knew what to do. And I said to him afterwards, how did you know what to do? So he lit a candle by the head. And when the family was ready to say goodbye, they covered the mate, the deceased. And it was a beautiful circle of prayers. That's how they let him go. And the parents were able to say, we're letting you go. So powerful. It was like, there was so much love there. There was no choice but to let him go. But that's how they closed that. They were able to, I mean, he was surrounded by people that just loved and adored him and raised him. Very, very difficult though. So when I asked Gadi, how did you know? He just said, I don't know. I just knew. Like, you just know what to do. So not a normal situation. That's not a typical situation. But let's try to focus on a typical situation, okay? And we can go back and forth and talk about the different ways of how we cope with this. So someone passes, and the mitzvah in the book of Devarim, there's two mitzvahs in the Torah that talk about what you do for the body. So it says, the first one says, his body shall not remain through the night without being buried. Like, stop everything you're doing and get this person buried as soon as possible. And with that comes exceptions, like anything for the dignity of the deceased you could do. Meaning if someone is traveling far away, like one of his children or someone close to him, you wait for that if that's what mate would want, okay? Or if they're preparing the shrouds, which nowadays it's all prepared beforehand. But in the olden days, they wouldn't bury a body unless they had the proper shrouds. So they would, if they were busy with the preparation, you would delay it. But other than that, you don't just delay for no reason, according to the Jewish way, as soon as you can. So the first quote in Devarim, that he shall be buried right away, he shall not remain through the night, for his honor. And also because there's anguish caused to the one that passed. From the time his soul is taken from him, like it needs to rest. The body needs to rest so that the soul could start its journey upwards. Okay. And then there was one more quote also in Devarim, similar, you shall bury him on that day. Okay. And really everyone is supposed to be a part of this. There's no one that is too high, too up there, that this is beneath their dignity. Like the king, the president, whoever, like according to Judaism, it doesn't matter what your status is. Everyone must partake in this mitzvah. And that's why at a funeral, you have people that come up, shovel a few scoops, and stick the shovel in the ground, and then the next person goes. There's no one that's like, oh, I don't do that. We all partake in the burying because we're all supposed to be a part of this process. And I think I've mentioned before that, so much so that the halacha is that until a body has reached its Jewish burial, the entire city is not allowed to go to work. Meaning we're very lucky here in Chicago. We have the Chicago Jewish Burial Society. Like we know it's taken care of. We don't need to think twice. But in a smaller city like Portland, Oregon, it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. Like I remember like the first week we arrived in Portland, my husband went to shul, and this man, his name is Mr. Rosenberg, Michael Rosenberg, his son and daughter-in-law live on Kedzie right next to Hana. They're a young couple. So he's like a real tzaddik, Michael Rosenberg. And Gadi didn't know what to expect of him. He just got, it was literally that week he arrived. And after Shacharis, Mr. Rosenberg is like, you, and he called Gadi. And Gadi didn't know what he was getting himself into, but he's like, I need you guys now. We're doing a tahara. That was how Gadi got into it. It was just like, you, and you went. You just dropped whatever you were doing that day and you went for the next 2-3 hours, you were busy. So I want to share with you how I got into it. That there is this incredible lady, Donna Kuttner. If you listen to my podcast, I have a really good episode with her. We speak all about it. But my call to action was Donna called me one day. I was also pretty new in Portland. And she said, Eva, we have no one else to do it. I know you're not even trained yet. Like she usually does a whole training for the women. The men, it's like, you, come on. But the women, it's a little bit more sensitively done and you learn. There's a lot to learn. And she just called me, she said, I have no one. Please, I need you. I said, for sure. I canceled whatever I had going on that day, went with her, and we did it together. For my first experience, I'm learning with this incredible woman. She fits right into L'chaim. Like she's just like a very simple, humble Jewish woman, but like the best of the best of the best, right? And I started saying like, Donna, like, can I call you my Rebbitzin? Right? She was like, you, Sue. She's just like with her cute little like gray haircut and personality plus. And anyway, so at the end of the first experience, which you could read about on Aish.com, I wrote an article after that first time because it was a friend of mine's mother that I assisted in, and it was a very powerful experience. So she says to me in the car, she drove me home, she parks outside my house, and she looks at me straight in the eyes, and she said, Eve, this is going to be I'm going on my 100th tahara. Okay, this is her mitzvah. Talk about, how my mom was like, her mitzvah was candle lighting. Everyone has something that's special to them. She's like, this is my mitzvah. And she was like at 98 at that point. Now she's over 100. And she said, and I've devoted my life to this mitzvah, but I'm just so afraid that when it's my time, no one's going to be able to do it for me the way that I want it done. Which that was my call to action. I was like, Donna, I'm in, I'm yours. And I never turned down a tahara. Anytime she called, sorry?
What's it?
Oh, the Jewish process of, it's the the washing, there's so many words to describe it. It's the purification process for the body. We basically make a mikvah for the body. We pour waters over the body, we purify it. It is the most, I've never done it without tears. Like you're just crying, because that, in my opinion, is what taught me about sensitivity. If we were to treat people that are alive, the way that Judaism teaches us to treat people when they're no longer alive, we'd be good, because it's done with so much sensitivity and prayers, and we're asking the Meitad, this body, we're asking, I mean, her soul is hovering above the body, but we're asking for permission. We're asking for mechila. Like the words mechila is, we're apologizing if anything was done that was not according to her will. If we did something, like it's such a beautiful, we're holding hands with the deceased. In order to get her dressed, you're clasping hands, hand in hand. There's no stronger, closer circle of women than the few ladies that are assisting in this, will never be repaid. It's total volunteer work. It's something that might be a little bit out of comfort zones, right? And yet there's something so beautiful in it. And then as we dress her, and she looks like a bride, honestly, it's like a bride. They're crisp white linen garments. We're like getting her ready for her chuppah. That's what it feels like. She's going to meet her creator. There's nothing more powerful, like pristine, beautiful, clean, glistening. We put like earth over the heart from Israel, and like stones from Israel over the eyes, and one over the mouth, and with blessings. Everything has meaning. Every part of it has meaning. And as we wheel her out for her final journey, with the blessings, the prayers that we say is, and this is where I always break down. The prayer is, please will you be a molitz yoshar. Do you know what those words? A conduit for us. Please you're going to be so much further up than we could ever get in this world. Please can you help us down here? And it's so beautiful. Like we're in this together. Like you're going on, we're stuck here. We're going to do our best, but could you do a part for us? Could you bring our prayers up high? Can you advocate for us down here? We're struggling here. So it's just a beautiful process from beginning to end. There's so much you could read about it. There's so much, you should know about it, because, if it's your own parents or whoever, like, you were telling me yesterday about your father. He's your father, right? Your mother had the purification. What a merit that is. What a merit that is. I remember when my grandmother, I'll tell you, interesting. It's very interesting how tied my family is to this whole idea of this purification process. So when my first grandparent passed away, I was only 1 year old. It was my mother's father, my Zaidi Wisher. He passed away from a heart attack. He was 70 years old. He was a young man, survivor of the Holocaust, and it's just so sudden, right? My mom was a young mom, and at his funeral, there was an open casket, and he was all made up with makeup. And my mother didn't know any better. She was living in Montreal, Canada. You would think in a big community like Montreal, you would think someone would tell her, by the way, there's a way of Jewish burial. No one said anything to her. I don't know who decided on what package, but my mom didn't know there was something wrong. But in her gut, she knew there's something wrong. She had this queasy feeling that this didn't feel right. And it sat with her for a long time. It was, I think so. I think so. Yeah. This is going back, this is in the 80s, this early 80s. There's history about the Chaver Kadisha there's misconceptions. You know how there's so many misconceptions in Judaism, like people think this, that, whatever, and we're always busting the misconceptions. That's actually not why we do that. You know, there's actually no hole in the tzitzis, or, you know, like in the sheet, you know, like all these crazy things that you learn from outside sources. So there are misconceptions about the Chaver Kadisha, and there's not nice things in the history of Judaism that kind of might have pushed people to not keep these traditions alive. But I think we're reclaiming them, and we're just breaking down those myths, and we know that Jewish burial is so important, and unfortunately cremation, which is so popular, it's not allowed according to Judaism. And if we could even, you know, convince one person in our life to consider a Jewish burial, we've done our part. We can't force it. We could try. Sometimes, you know, it's just, there's nothing you could do, but we have to do our part. Yes, Sue.
As part of this process.
Okay, so you said a shomer. Okay, so that was something. Shomer is someone that guards over the body. So I explained the Torah. The Torah is saying bury right away that day, except for, you know, circumstances that are beyond your control. You need to take the soul out of anguish, and the soul needs to be at rest. So we need to bury the body. In Israel, it is very, very rare that they will delay. They won't go past nightfall. Well, no. So is it all night long? I mean, there are burials, and you're right. Meaning that day. Okay, that's what that I think is what I meant. This is yeah.
For the plane arrives,
They go straight.
it goes right to the cemetery, and the family actually not allowed to do it.
Wow. Right. Especially after such a long flight and all that. So I don't know the details. In this book that I'm learning, like it says that day, meaning before nightfall, meaning if like it should be that day. But I think, you know, there's lots of reasons that people delay so we just have to just as soon as we can. One of my Momentum ladies from Portland, she just lost her father-in-law this past week. And I was on the phone with her, and I said, well, when is the funeral, and what can we do for you? And her husband is very close with Gadi. So she actually said, because of the holidays, December and 25th, and, you know, like all the secular holidays, they're waiting until, like, they're waiting a month. It was like, yeah. So it's just like, you know, to each their own. I told her what Judaism says and what we try to do. And, you know, we just need to do our part in educating. Like there's a certain like educating like about Jewish burial and how it's done. And then let's talk a little bit about the Shiva house, because I feel like this is an area that also we need a lot of education. Yes. Oh yeah. 3 stones. So it's a shard from Israel. It's a piece of pottery. And I mean, and there's also the dirt from Israel. So in every room where we do a Chaver Kadisha, we have a big jar of earth from Israel. And it actually in the box, we get a box nowadays, it's all nicely done. It's not like in the olden days, like it's beautiful white linen with a collar. It's beautiful. Like we tie the wrists and like there's lots of ties, and the way that we tie is like we actually do is very Kabbalistic. We say Aleph, Bet, Gimel, like we're tying it with meaning, and we're saying words the whole time, like Tahorahi, she is pure, she is pure, she is pure every time as we tie it in certain ways. The ties actually are like a shin. There's 3 loops up and 1 loop down. So it's like Hashem's name, the Shakai. It's absolutely spectacular. And then right before, once we put the body into the coffin, by the way, the Jewish coffins, I mean, my first experience when I told you I went with Donna, and I had no idea because she's like, I need you now. And I just went. But when I got there, literally, she handed me a power tool. Literally, I was drilling holes in the box, in the coffin, because it was a non-Jewish funeral home. They weren't all prepared for us, and there were no holes. So we, as according to Judaism, we want to be buried straight into the earth. We were like made from the earth, like Adam took the dew of the dust of the earth and the dew of the heavens and molded first man. So we're kind of created from the earth and we go back to the earth. So we want to have that contact with the earth. So there has to be holes. And so once the body is in and there's a sheet, a white linen sheet, and anyways, we kind of open a few places. We do it because there's a like a head scarf and a covering over the face, like a little covering. So we just move it to the side and we do the eyes, and the mouth is the shards from Israel. And the heart and the mouth also has the earth, the dirt, like the dirt from Israel. So I'm not quite sure, and I'll look it up for you. I don't remember the significance, but it has to do with like, you know, all that you've seen, all that you've said, like kind of connecting you back to, like, you know, we close that part. We like close the eyelids, close the mouth, like just to end with Israel on our lips, on our eyes. But there's probably another meaning. Oh, on the groin. Yeah, we pour it over the groin area. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, no, that would totally be acceptable. So, yeah.
And it's going.
Wow. Wow, I've never heard of that, but it's probably a
I thought it was everybody. But
a personal,
That's like, when my father died, I gave him his house. Then my brothers were using today, my father's house. His son gave him his house. My brother's mother, my mother. And so that's sort of how, but I just thought that was like everything.
I've never heard that before, but I think it's a preference, right? If someone has a talus, not everyone has a talus, but many people are buried in their talus as their shroud. Like in Israel, it's very common that in Israel, they don't use a coffin. So you're just, it's kind of like a green funeral. They have that in Portland. You're allowed to have a green funeral, and Hunter's funeral was actually all green, meaning there was no coffin. And we buried him in Gadi's talus. And it was so meaningful and heartbreaking and just so meaningful. I mean, this is like a family, like he was their only child, and yeah, it was, I mean, so Gadi, the talus that I bought my husband was a pure wool talus. I got it for him for our wedding. It was like a really beautiful talus, and he uses a different talus now. So when we were figuring out how to accommodate the family that wanted a green funeral, right, like very Portland style, we offered, like, we wanted it to be as kosher as possible. So we offered, would you like our talus? And it was beautiful, and it was wrapped with twine and flowers and just all natural. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna end in just a few minutes, but I just want to get to, I know it's a little bit of a heavy class. Sorry, we had to get through this. Okay, it's just so important, but I just want to, let's bring some practicality that we could do for other people. So Shiva, okay? So as someone that attends a Shiva house, what is our role? So our presence needs to be a comfort.
On the north side, it's the feedback.
It's not words, okay? So actually Jewish law is that you're not allowed to speak unless someone speaks to you, right? Yes, you have to, so you come, usually people are sitting on low chairs and all the mourners are in one area. And you come and you nod and you just stand. Or you sit, right? You sit or you stand or you just there. Make like they see you, they nod, they know you're there, and that's it. You don't say anything unless you're spoken to. So actually, there are different stages. Okay, so the first 3 days are for crying. First 3 days, a mourner cannot actually be consoled, or unless they're ready to be consoled. But typically, this is according to Judaism, first 3 days. That's why if you're not so close, maybe don't go until day 4, right? I mean, I know a lot of people only do 1 day nowadays. Like, I mean, there's different people do it differently, but you're supposed to have 7 days. Shiva means 7. Shiva also means to sit. Sit for 7 days. It's such a gift to give a mourner the space to really mourn, right? When I mean, Judaism got this right. In other cultures where we don't have this, how do you go back to your life? How do you just take a day off and go back? Where do you put all that pain?
That's Saturday after. Saturday after. And I'm fine with everyone. Mother said to me, "That's how
Yeah,
this little level.
Yeah.
she said, I should be.
Right.
That's what you do. You certainly don't. I don't believe. That was the best.
right. And she was so right. So let's go through the process. So we spoke about like the day of dying is very painful for the soul. So that's very painful for us. And that's really not a time to cry. Like Stu said, you cry. But the truth is, a mourner is usually in such shock and they're so busy with the preparations that they can't really sit and cry. So it's usually when you come home from the funeral that first meal, you are not allowed to eat your own food, according to Jewish law. That is the only meal that your neighbors and friends should bring you. We make all the food, we make it all about the food, but it's only that one meal it's a mourner's meal. You're not eating your own food. You're being served because you're exempt from everything. And I loved what Judy, you taught me something so beautiful that David once said that, so here I found it in the book, so I'll just read it from here. So the soul of someone that passes away is very aware of what's going on around him, and he can no longer do mitzvot. So since he can no longer perform mitzvot himself, seeing other people flaunting their mitzvot causes the soul pain, because he remembered that dissonance, like that is hell, realizing I could have done more, I should have done more, and now it's over. I cannot do mitzvot. Mitzvot are only done in this world. So he's feeling this pain. And for that reason, we're very, very careful in the house of a mourner when the soul has levels of going up. We're very careful not to even go into a cemetery or to walk very close to someone that has passed away with our mitzvot flaunted, like our tzitzit hanging out, or our tefillin, or our talit, because we don't want to cause pain. They're already in so much pain and turmoil. The soul is not yet at rest. So we have to be very careful during this time because the soul is still lingering. Okay, so this is what happens with the soul and what happens with us. So there's two things going on, right? When you go to a Shiva house, you're there to honor the person that has passed, and you're also there to comfort the mourners. So it's like very interesting, right? Because what we're doing for the deceased, eulogizing the deceased, what we're doing for the mourner, comforting the mourner, sometimes not even saying a word. We're like balancing two different things. honoring a person in this world, honoring a soul. Okay, so this is how the timeline works. First 3 days are so intense for the mourner that they are set aside for crying. It's intense mourning. After the 3 days, we have the 7-day period, the Shiva. And then we get up from Shiva, and there's lots of customs how we get up. Sometimes we fall into such a deep depression during those days, or it's almost hard to pull ourselves out and to get back to life. So there is a custom. This is a custom. It's not my custom, but I have experienced this at one of the Shivas, that someone would come, like one of the family members, like the not the mourners, but the outside family members, and they'll say, get up, get up. They'll start screaming, out, get out. And they'll take them to walk outside, and they walk around the block because we have to help them get back to life. We're not staying in our mourning. We're not staying in this place of pain. We're going to ease it off a little bit. So the next period is 30 days, the Shloshim. And the 30 days is known to be a time where we talk about the deceased. We give hesped. We still share memories. But after the 30 days, when we see someone in the street, we're not supposed to mention the name of the person that has passed, because everyone is different. We could still say, may you be comforted. We still give comfort, but we're not like rehashing, opening up the wounds in the supermarket. It's just we're trying to help them get back to functioning. And then after the 30-day period, we could call it the year, we could call it the 11 months, right? And it's different for a parent that loses a child or a child that loses a parent, okay? A parent that loses a child doesn't need a year of Avelus. They don't need it. They could go and buy clothes. They're already in such anguish over this not natural way of the world that they don't need any reminders. But a child that loses a parent needs the extra reminders, cannot listen to music, cannot go to a simcha, cannot buy new clothing, okay? And there are many other customs. Even for the 30-day period, people don't wear freshly laundered clothing, not ironed clothing. People don't, what was the other thing? Oh, get a haircut. They refrain from haircuts for the first 30 days. There are some customs for the 30 days. And then when it comes to the year, it depends which way the relationship is going. Parent to child doesn't have as intense customs because they're already going through such living hell. Questions?
Customs. Get abbreviated. I got passed away.
Should I explain that? Did you understand that, Jude? Okay, yeah, meaning like if there's like 2 days of Shiva and then we have a holiday, the Shiva's over.
So my father died.
Rosh Hashanah.
And it was
Right.
and it feels like hey,
Mm.
but you're not ready
To go to re-enter.
back on.
No, no, no. Yeah, of course, of course. It's so
And you just
individual.
do it as-
Yeah,
and so for
yeah.
me, it felt easier to sort
Yeah.
of keep
Take it
things
at your own
on.
pace. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the timeline helps us understand like what the goal is, right? We're never like someone that loses a loved one, you're never gonna fill that void. You will, for the rest of your life, you hold every day, you hold that emptiness that person brought into your life, and you honor their memory and you keep them alive in your own way. So you're never supposed to completely be over it. But it's like rehabilitating you back to functioning. And it's very healthy, this plan. And I'm just going to end with this. If we could close with one takeaway, which is so important to know, what is the blessing we give someone at a Shiva house? Yeah, good. Okay. So this is if you want the one takeaway, because usually when you get to a Shiva house, you're like, sometimes they have cards where you can read it, and sometimes you're like, what are you supposed to say? And it's like this awkward silence. Right. So sometimes they have it, but it's in Hebrew we say Hashem Yenachem Etchem. May God bring comfort to you, Betoch Sha'ar Tzion Yerushalayim, amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And everywhere you go throughout the entire world, you go to a Shiva house, the same words are said.
When you walk that cemetery,
That's what's said also. Yeah, on both sides.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. May God bring comfort to you amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. You're not alone. You're not alone. We're part of the Jewish nation. And
I've seen people.
wow, I've never heard that.
And I don't know what that's about. Somebody's husband.
Wow, never heard that. No, never heard that. But I think we're gonna end with that. We went a little bit over time. Here's a nice one, a nice blessing to end with. Okay, so and this is a very South African blessing. When you hear that someone passes away, South Africans, what they always say is, "May you have a long life." Do you ever hear South Africans saying that? That's what they always say. You hear, oh, someone passed away, may you have a long life. They always say it's so beautiful because, and that's my blessing to all of you, all of us, may we all have a long life. But when the right time comes for us to take it up to the next level, may we all have the most beautiful transition to the next world and not be afraid, and know that it's going to be a beautiful process because we trust in our religion and our traditions. It's beautiful traditions. And by the way, the reason that I'm so excited about the article and the topic and bringing sensitivity into it is like this whole thing is done with such utmost sensitivity and care. By the way, in a tahara where we're literally putting the whole body in a bath of water, there's never a time, never a moment that the whole body is uncovered. We wash one arm, one limb at a time and cover it. We keep on putting on a new sheet on the body. And it's just so beautiful. There's so much dignity from beginning to end. And you think about it, like, how would you, like, I asked the questions, what would you want written on your stone? What do you want said at your eulogy? And how do you want to be treated? And I know after working with these holy women that dedicate their lives to this mitzvah, this is how I want to go. It's a beautiful way of going. And when things get, we've had some complications, right? As complications always come up. And I almost feel myself, you feel a soul, okay? You feel a soul in the room and you're doing your best with the situation. And I'm almost having a conversation with the soul the whole time. And I'm telling her, like the way I would talk to a child, I'm saying, almost done. Let's just get through this. 5 more minutes. You're going to be ready to go. Like I'm talking to her the entire time. You got this. Let's do this together. Like, because sometimes it's hard. Like the body, like a dead body it's not like an alive body that's easy to move and to bend and to dress. It's not like that. And sometimes it's hard. And you're just talking to them. We're almost there. You're going to rest. You're going to be reunited. And something else, I mean, I could just go on and on about this, but something else that I found so incredible is that usually I don't know this person, right? It's usually a cold call. I get this call from the Chaver Kedisha come. I don't know the person. I don't know what their life was, but you could tell that the body keeps toll. Like, there's a book that just came out, like what's it called? The Body Tells. It's like a new book that's really, anyways, I think it's like the body keeps the toll. But basically what I mean is there's a whole story written on this woman's body that I could tell that she was a mother and a child and a nurturer and someone that had joy. Sometimes there's a smile plastered on the face, like, sometimes the muscles just freeze in certain ways. And you just see a whole story, like you don't know who this person is, but you feel so connected to the, what came before her, what's coming after her. Like, it's just, we're all a part of this beautiful, beautiful sisterhood. The body keeps score. So that's what I think about. Like, you could tell where there's been surgeries and there's scars, and this lady has gone through so much, And she made it to like, 98 years old. Like sometimes I'm just like in awe of the resilience of women. It's unbelievable. Like you could, yeah, yeah. So very good question. Every single hair, this is talk about the sensitivity. Every single hair that falls out, we wash the hair and we comb the hair. We like get her ready for her chuppah. We're like, it's like beauty, what's it called? Like we're taking her to like the salon, So we wash her hair, we give her like a bubble bath, right? Like with washcloths. So we wash the hair, we comb the hair. Every single hair that falls out of her head is collected and put in a linen bag. Every nail clipping, because we trim the nails, we clean the nails, we take a lot of time. Yeah, it's basically we make a mikvah. We're just taking anything that's external away. Like if there's like bandage, we have special solutions that take off like the bandage. We just want her to be her and the waters of the mikvah that we create, and then to go straight back to the ground. So every hair is collected off the table, like every single hair, and is buried with her. And every bit of body fluid is also like everything that we could collect is buried with her because it's part of her. There's such a kedusha, a holiness to a human being that even after the soul is no longer there, we still treat the empty vessel. Just the body is treated with so much holiness. It's like, this is how we need to be sensitive to the people that are alive, that have souls in them. It's like, it changes everything. I feel like the first time I did a tahara, I just, everything looked different to me. I seriously, I was walking around and I'm like, the whole world looks different to me. People look different to me. Everything was like, I had so much clarity, Sue, so much clarity with what it's all about. It's not about the pettiness. We can't get petty. This is like, we're a soul put into a body, and then the soul is taken from us. And we say this every day in the morning prayers, but like to see it and to understand it, this is real. This is Judaism. And there's an afterlife, and it's all okay. And God loves us. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'm going to end here because I need to get going. But yeah. This is such a good question. I have to take this question. Okay, so in the beginning, oh my goodness. And this was actually, remember, you know how I started the class talking about this speech that I heard from the convention where people were sharing like what it was like behind the scenes. So there was actually one of the beautiful stories that came up was that there was Chevra Kadisha, which is the burial society in New York, where there were a lot of unfortunate deaths in the beginning of COVID. So there's this one rabbi, he said, we were working day and night, and we had sometimes 40 or 50 taharas in one day. Unbelievable. And so in that specific place in Brooklyn, where they had the staff, they were able to keep going with them. But in many, many places, unfortunately, well, in Chicago, I'm assuming they kept going with it. Well, okay, so there's two Chevra Kadishas. I don't know. I have to find out. I'll ask. I have a friend that's involved here. I don't know what was done here, but I just know that in Portland, which was such a small place, and there were only a few of us, and I was the youngest one. Most of the women were over 70, and they were told not to do taharas during COVID. So there were some taharas that literally, I mean, there was one time that I asked Miriam, my daughter, she was only like 17. I said, like, do you want to come with me? Because like, it's not going to happen. There were very few times, and in the end, she didn't have to. Like, I was nervous to bring her at such a young age, but she said, Mommy, I'll come with you. And that's also another amazing thing, my connection with Tahara. So I told you about my grandfather and how it bothered my mother. And then when my mother became observant and she learned there is a Jewish way of burial, so my mom got involved with the Chevra Kadisha in Toronto, and she never told me about it. Never told me about it. There was like a limo that would come and pick her up. Every now and then they had a limo pick up the ladies that would come through the taharas, and we never knew where my mom was going. She never spoke about it. And then years later, when I'm living in Portland and they called me up to say, could you be a part of it? So wasn't even a question. It was like, and then that's when I said to my mom, were you involved? And she said, yeah. And I said, I knew it all along. So there is like this, like, I don't know, it's generational. Who knows? Maybe our ancestors were involved in Europe. They always had a Chaver Kadisha. This was like basic. People would stop their work and would drop everything and take care of the deceased. So your question is very good. During COVID, it was very, very challenging. I went in a hazmat suit. Hazmat suit. You don't even know. I look like an alien, like head to toe with booties. And I would take the hazmat suit off before I got into my car. And I would have a change of shoes before I got into my house. And I would go, and I was very, very nervous. We were very scared, but we also knew that we need to give these Jewish people a Jewish kosher burial. And thank God I never had COVID. Like I did it throughout the whole COVID, and I was one of the only people that were doing it. And the men also, men do men, women do women. And it is so beautiful that, so here's another mitzvah for you, homework. Last time you did the Hachnasas Kala, and this time your homework is to look up something in Chicago, because Chesed always starts at home, do a little research and see, maybe make an $18 donation to the Chaver Kadisha. You don't have to be the one to volunteer, but you should know what's going on in the community. Are they at a deficit? Are they doing okay?
If you're registered, and you would notice on the website, and they're smart. They also believe on the, and I use that as an opportunity.
Yeah. And when you know, please God, in the right time, when you need the services, they will be there for you. Yeah.
What time is your flight?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, see you guys soon.
Are you leaving the car here?
No, actually, Laura's gonna drop me off. So yeah. But hopefully, please God, and I'll come back and I'll test down.
Bye, ladies. Have a great week. Joyce, we can't hear you. You're muted. Can you unmute? Okay. Bye, everyone. Get this to end. There we go.